Everyone is lonely and desperate for companionship, but the field is so flooded with options, there's such a surplus that you begin to feel like, kind of like I feel when I'm in the condiment aisle at Walmart trying to buy mustard. And there are 197 different types of mustard. And though all I want is just regular mustard, the overwhelming array of options paralyzes me. And I'm just standing there slack-jawed, questioning whether I should be settling for just regular mustard when I could be getting gourmet, Dijon, whole grain, honey French, yellow, spicy brown, white, yellow, German.
I really hope his wife is watching the segment. So, am I Grey Poupon, honey? Yes, you are. That's the metaphor I'm crafting. How about we learn a little bit about being a man? Why modern dating is a toxic wasteland. Matt Walsh is going to be inoffensive, right? This will be fine.
Married people these days must feel like they caught the last chopper out of Nam. And perhaps that's the better analogy, whichever image you prefer. The point is that I wake up every day grateful to be married, mostly because, I love my wife and my family, but also because I simply could not be a single man in this environment. I would have already become a monk or a hermit in the woods by now. I don't say this to rub it in the faces of people in the audience who are single. I say it more as encouragement, really, for any who are married. Because even if you're struggling in your marriage, even if you and your spouse have hit hard times, consider that the alternative is to wander alone in this barren wasteland. Realize that all you have is each other. Out there, it's dark and cold, and you'll likely die.
I mean, do single people watch this? Because I imagine this would be very depressing to sit through. It's like, oh, wow, he's right. It is a barren wasteland. What have I been doing? Help me, Matt.
Shivering and alone. So your marriage is your shelter. Be grateful for it. Stop screwing it up. Do you really want to start over again in this environment? Would you really prefer to be out there dating during the zombie apocalypse? Again, I'm not trying to make single people feel bad. It's more that I'm commiserating with you. Now, many of the problems with modern dating, and
I don't like. Okay, well, I'm not single, so I don't know if this is appealing to me. But I don't feel in any way that this is commiseration. I'm not like, oh yes, no, I feel seen. He's really speaking to people's inner turmoil.
And with modern culture in general and dating in general, were highlighted by a recent viral phenomenon, which began on TikTok, as they often do, and then spread like herpes to other social media platforms, which is where I became aware of it. From what I can tell, it began when a woman used her platform to vent her frustrations about a man that she'd recently met on a dating app called Hinge, which I didn't even know existed until I heard about this. The man, Caleb, took her out on one date.
Hell yes. I didn't know this was West Elm Caleb. Is that it? I didn't know this was more West Elm Caleb discourse. All right, I'm here for this, baby. Yes.
And then never talked to her again, otherwise known as ghosting, as the kids call it now. Other women on TikTok then chimed in with their own horror stories about the man who had quickly been dubbed West Elm Caleb, a moniker based on where he works. And soon his name was trending nationwide. He had been doxxed all across the internet. So here's just to give you an idea of what this is. Here's a quick sample of one of the video testimonials. And there are like hundreds like this.
Oh, it's
but one of the video testimonials that you might find detailing the dastardly crimes of this Caleb character. Here it is.
I matched with Caleb on Hinge and we started talking. We talked for like 2-3 weeks, maybe, like nothing serious. I never met this man, like literally just texting, Snapchatting, whatever. Same thing happened that everyone's talking about. He was super weird, like started getting very cryptic and concerning and ghosted. So he ghosted me, we stopped talking. I went my separate way.
Okay, I guess I should give a quick background. If you're not familiar with the Caleb story, so I saw the first one of the person who was originally stating that they had gone on a date with Caleb, and that Caleb actually woke up in the bed of someone else that morning, and they were unaware of it. The whole thing kind of screamed of like, if the person had been lying to like 20 different women that he was in a serious relation and a committed relationship with all of them, and then was sleeping around with all of them, and then that's scumbag behavior. But in this case, they're all just young and dating each other and using apps to do that. And this person apparently is like a serial ghoster, and that was one of the big things. And then it suddenly became a bigger story and a bigger story. Like obviously, don't ghost people. It's shitty behavior. Like if you're interested in someone, be interested in them, and if you're not, just say you're not. It's a lot weirder for you to just be like ignore and then just assume that like, okay, now the problem is gone. It's gone on my end, so it's gone in general, right? But the fact that everyone has invested so much time and energy into this until it blew up into like an internet phenomenon.
Didn't think of this man, was
like, isn't this
nothing really going?
I guess I'm going to be old timey here, but isn't this just how you kids use these dating apps nowadays? Isn't that what happens? You go on different dates, you might have some different sexual partners, and that's the story.
On. And then, okay, so I go on with my life. I'm minding my own business until about a month ago, sometime during December, I see that I have an Instagram request, DM request, or whatever. And who could it be? Who could it be? It's him. on his new Instagram account, not Caleb Hunter. Okay.
Riveting. Like I told you, I'm so glad I'm not dating anymore with people like this. This is what you have to deal with. And I'm talking about the woman, not even the guy. Now, she went on in that video to post screenshots of the texts from Caleb where he tries to get back into her good graces after ignoring her for a year. She turns him down, and that's the end of it. So far as I can tell, all of the videos are like this. Caleb is guilty of being rude and tacky, and for that infraction, he apparently deserves to be doxxed and publicly shamed by women who are all almost certainly at least as shallow and selfish as he is. So there's a lot that can be said about the lack of proportionality when the internet mob sets its sights on someone. Local news stories become global concerns, and stories that wouldn't even be fit to air on the local news or to be written on a note card and tacked to a bulletin board somewhere still turn into national affairs. We could say plenty about that, but that's not what we're focused on today. Dating is the issue. And this story reveals its myriad pitfalls in our current climate. The whole scene is one big pit that so many millions fall into and never manage to escape. Marriage rates are plummeting rapidly and historically in this country, so that as of just 2 years ago, less than half of the households in the U.S. consisted of married couples and families. Now, to put that in perspective, in 1950,
he's probably going to also bring up the fact that people are way more celibate now than they ever have been. Like that's also a trend that's been widely reported on. They don't usually bring up the fact that a lot of this has to do with the new paradigm of how we interact with each other, which is very heavily online, right? They don't actually approach these things from that kind of a perspective. It's typically that this is the downfall of society. This is indicative of people, not having the same ties to religious institutions as they used to. The family dynamic has been completely destroyed. You could pepper in the trans agenda or the gay agenda in there as well for good measure, something to that effect.
The number was 80%. So it used to be 80% of the households featured a married couple.
Not to mention the price of all that, the price of weddings, the price of a marriage, the price of all these kind of things. Like, I think, younger generations are getting increasingly priced out of a lot of these events that were supposed to be what defines us as a society.
It was a family with a married couple. Now it's less than half, and the numbers are still trending downward. There are numerous reasons for this catastrophic shift, but certainly one of the most prominent reasons is that our social system for matching people up, pairing them off, and setting them on the path towards marriage and parenthood and real adult life is fundamentally broken. So for one thing, everyone, of course, is using dating apps now, which are different even from the dating sites of ancient times back in the early 2000s when I was single. We had the dating websites, and back then you would fill out a lengthy profile and you'd be given in return a comparatively small group of potential matches to contact. But now those old-fashioned websites have been replaced by apps which are much easier to use and to peruse, and most people have more than one that they monitor at any given time. It doesn't require any effort or commitment to use the apps, and the user sort of swipes through it very quickly, casually discarding potential matches based on nothing but a cursory glance at their photograph. So all judgments are made visually, which already distorts the entire process because a woman's romantic attraction is not naturally as visually based as a man's. And that's how a slovenly ogre like myself ends up marrying a hot woman. Because a woman is attracted to personality, sense of humor, intelligence. But little of that translates through an app, which means that many quality mates are sent to the junk folder just because they're bad at taking selfies. Meanwhile, there are far too many choices. So the modern...
So, wait, what? So, that's not true. Is there some surplus of what you have to add your 5 best comedy singers in the profile? Is that it, like one after another? Because women aren't actually looking for attraction or people they're attracted to. They're simply looking for personality, and that's exclusively it.
The dating scene is what happens when every beggar becomes a chooser. Everyone is lonely and desperate for companionship, but the field is so flooded with options. There's such a surplus that you begin to feel kind of like I feel when I'm in the condiment aisle at Walmart trying to buy mustard. And there are 197 different types of mustard. And though all I want is just regular mustard, the overwhelming array of options paralyzes me. And I'm just standing there slack-jawed, questioning whether I should be settling for just regular mustard when I could be getting gourmet, Dijon, whole grain, honey French, yellow, spicy brown, white, yellow, German.
I really hope his wife is watching the segment. So, am I Grey Poupon, honey? Yes, you are. That's the metaphor I'm crafting.
Mustard instead. All of modern life is plagued by this problem. Everything is plentiful and can be obtained effortlessly and cheaply. But it's too plentiful and too effortless and too cheap. So you can turn on your TV and watch literally any movie that's ever been made, any TV show that's ever been produced. And yet how many nights have you wasted scrolling through the infinite catalog?
We have too much abundance. I guess that's the problem. That was a weird angle. I didn't think he'd come at it from that. So we have too much abundance, and that's what's creating the current problems in society. I mean, there's a lot of things you got to consider here. One, how much free time do you have? Do you have a lot of time to be spending hours a day on these apps? Do you have a lot of time to be spending hours a day going on multiple dates? Do you have hours a day doing all this? Or are you starting to feel a crunch in society? Are you working multiple jobs to pay rent? Are you working multiple jobs to eat? Like, there are other factors outside of, women aren't physically attracted to their partners, and so they only look for humor, and that doesn't translate well in these dating apps, and at the end of the day, there's just too much mustard. Ultimately, it's the mustard paradox. We have an abundance of mustard, and people aren't able to choose and discern the difference between maybe some carnival mustard and maybe some Grey Poupon. Like, there's people who want a difference. Also, by the way, like, I think the idea that people don't have to get married, or people don't have to have kids, or even people perhaps don't have to be in a monogamous relationship exclusively also might play into this as well. Like, certain people want certain things.
And then settling on reruns of, The Office because there's nothing else to watch. Well, there's plenty to watch. It's just that you can't settle on any one thing because your awareness that there are billions of other possibilities gives you anxiety. And it makes it so that you can never be sure that you're choosing the absolute best option, which means that often you don't choose anything at all. So dating is like this now. Whereas before you had only
too much
the eligible single people in your town to choose from, now you have the entire internet. You're not confined by geographic.
Wait. Match Group. Match Group is an American internet and technology company headquartered in Dallas, Texas. It owns and operates the largest global portfolio of popular online dating sites, including Tinder, Match, Meetic, OkCupid, Hinge, and Plenty of Fish are all owned by the same company? Holy shit. Hablo, amoureux. Oh, that's got to be the French one. Now directs to Meetic. I didn't know about that. Black People Meet, BLK, Chispa, Dizons Domain, Hawaii, Hinge, Lexa.nl, Love Scout 24/7, Match, Meetic, OkCupid, Plenty of Fish, Ship, Tinder, Twoo. What is Twoo? Twoo is a social discovery platform owned by Massive Media. It creates user profiles, uploads pictures, chats out to other users. Okay. I mean, that could play a role in this as well. You have a single corporation that owns every single dating site and portfolio.
Boundaries or any other boundaries. The result, ironically, is...
Of course, it's a monopoly. It's like everything is eventually a monopoly. Monopoly, right?
It's paralysis. Now, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum are
I didn't know that.
marriages. Instead of a boundless, never-ending buffet of options, a young person in a culture that practices arranged marriages...
Oh, thanks. I'll look at that right afterwards.
Just one.
We were going to watch that live.
Choice. Their families just pair them up and say, here you go. There's far less freedom and far less autonomy in a system of that sort, but it is without a doubt superior to our system. We would be happier. Every person in the dating scene right now would be happier if they were just matched up with someone against their will, actually. Of course, even after you settle on a match and you meet them in person, a whole new set of problem arises. It would be impossible to review the whole list, but one of the big problems is that if you're in the younger generations, you're meeting someone who was raised on the internet, just like you. Having spent their formative years staring at screens, they oftentimes will not have developed the kind of interests and hobbies.
I'll be honest, and I'm saying this as a millennial, this feels like a millennial talking down to Zoomers. Like, this is what this really feels like. Every single one of you just doesn't understand. There's just too much mustard in the aisle. You kids don't understand. You got an abundance of mustard, and that's the problem. If there was less mustard options, you would pick the mustard that you enjoy. But instead, you're just like, I want all the mustard. That's what's wrong with every one of you.
And rich interior life that could form the basis for conversation and for interpersonal bonding. You also don't know where to go on a date or what to do because nobody wants to do anything but stare at their phones. And as the relationship progresses, if it does, you'll find that the internet also interferes with emotional intimacy because there's nothing private or sacred between you. Private life doesn't exist anymore, especially for younger people. People live their whole lives in public, sharing everything with the world, and leaving no parts of themselves emotionally or very often physically that are special or exclusive for their significant other.
The parts that he's identifying, which are obviously exacerbated by capitalism, he's not actually directing towards them. It's just kind of like throwing a whole bunch of darts at a wall and being like, old man yells at cloud, in this case, the cloud. Like,
And then there's the biggest hurdle of all, one which has been standing in the way ever since the modern concept of dating was first invented decades ago, but which has only grown larger and more insurmountable as the decades have gone by, and that is there's no goal with dating. There's no endpoint. There's no resolution. There's no logical progression. So those women complain about getting ghosted by Caleb, but what are they really complaining about? Did they see him as marriage material? Were they even looking for a man to marry? I'm guessing not. And if not, then their relationship with Caleb was doomed to fall apart anyway, sooner than later, just as all of their other relationships before and since have. What difference does it make if he disappears after one date or if he sticks around and the whole thing dissolves after 3 months? Who cares? You're just hopping into one car after another and each is going over a cliff. Does it really matter if it tumbles over the edge after 1 mile or 10? The whole enterprise is so fundamentally hopeless and pointless that, if anything, the Calebs of the world do you a favor by wasting less of your time. So here's the reality. There's no reason to be dating at all unless you're specifically looking for somebody to marry. If you have no interest in marriage, then all of your...
That's so weird, though. Could you imagine being on the first date and being like, so what exactly are you looking for? It's like, well, I'm looking for my life partner who I want to impregnate eventually. How about you? What are you looking for?
Romantic relationships are doomed before they start. You're building sandcastles during high tide. It's all going to be washed away before it can be finished. You're making a series of bad emotional investments, pouring yourself into one leaky container after another. It's no wonder that marriage rates are plummeting. People are exhausted.
One leaky container after another, Jesus.
Exhausted by romantic relationships and jaded by the whole enterprise before they even reach 25 years old. Because they've been betrayed and heartbroken and dumped and humiliated enough for 50 lifetimes. That's what happens when you take the courtship out of dating. Only solution is to put it back in. I mean, really forget about dating completely, in fact. Replace dating with courting. Don't waste your time on people who have no goal for their relationship.
Oh, is this where the whole viral video of him talking about arranged marriages comes from? Is this what he's leading up to?
Because marriage should always be the desired endpoint. Courting
Should
is
always
the trial period, the interview process that both partners are undergoing. You're interviewing each other for the job.
Yeah, that's utterly bizarre. That is not a reflection of how the world works. This is how medieval Europe worked. You know, are you looking to exchange women for property? Like, what the other? I can't imagine sitting down for a date with someone and then being like, all right, so this is the courtship process we're both engaged in. We're both trying to find out if you're going to be a compatible both life mate and potential offspring bearer for my seed. So yeah, let's talk about that.
Job. If you approach it dating that way, it will significantly reduce your options. That's for sure. But as we've seen, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Important to address that as a high value man, me want fuck. And the thing
I don't want to play any more than that. That's just a great line. As a high value man, me want fuck.
right, and I think it's important to address that as a high value man, me want fuck.
I think that succinctly summarizes the entirety of that style of podcast, right? Because men, you have to value yourselves, right? If a bunch of you fellas, if you're high value men, you have to understand that we're all thinking the same thing here, right? I'm high value and me one fuck. That's pretty much all there is to it. No, I'll play the whole comedy skit.
Right, and I think it's important to address that as a high value man, me want fuck. And the thing is, these females, they're out there wearing makeup. Fucking right, and that's what I'm getting at, is that if you are going to be a disobedient female, I will have a tanty. What I'm saying is, men, do not let these two holes be disobedient to you, right? What you're bringing to the table as a high value man. Like, I have a podcast, relatively successful, 37 listeners each week, and what I'm bringing to the table is that. And what are you bringing to the table? Stretch marks.
You don't understand the high value man thing. So if I could summarize from watching a handful of the clips from that. Hey, Deep Dish Bard, thank you for giving a sub to Me Want Fuck. Very, very kind of you. Is that it's trying to set up this juxtaposition between men and women, and it goes as follows. Women are interested, obviously, in having you pay for things, old school dynamics. They want you to be a provider, and then men, you have to value yourselves as a high value male, and don't allow them to manipulate you. So fellas, if you're high value, you have to understand that you're high value, and they ain't shit. That's basically the way this goes, right? Like the people in question, you have to, and this isn't new, by the way. It's kind of sad that this is still kind of a dynamic that is being pushed by, pickup artist style podcasts and stuff like that. But it goes like, in my time, rather than have this all said to us in podcast form, we had a book, what was it called? Fucking The Game. Yeah, and in the game it was very similar. Here's the strategies, fellas, if you want to get all the women in your life, all right? You have to get out there and you have to nag them. Nagging is the act of telling a woman, even if she's really, really hot, that she's really, really ugly. And especially if you're in a group. You have to remember the group dynamic here, okay? So if there's a woman who's really hot and then there's a woman who's less hot, all right? So what you do is you don't pay any attention to the woman who's hot, because if you do, she's going to know she has power over you. And this is all about power. So what you do is you actually spend time flirting with the woman who's not hot, and then the woman who's hot in turn is going to sit there and be like, well, why isn't he paying attention to me? And then when she's like, excuse me, I'm here, that's when you nag her, as in you insult her and be like, I'm not talking to you, you're ugly. Then she's going to want you even more, fellas, because, you know, girls love the asshole, and that this is how this whole dynamic's going to work. And you know that you as a high value male is going to be able to do and work the entire room. Now, guess what? You don't just do that to this group. You do that to every single group in the party. And so then you've gone to every single one, and then every single one of the Stacys is going to want you because you're now a Chad. You're definitely not the weirdo at the event who's walking around making fun of people and everyone who the fuck is that asshole over there? I don't know. He's a huge weirdo. He's just walking up to every group and then being like, you're ugly and shit like that. It's ridiculous. People love being verbally abused. It's great. I mean, like in the opposite of all of this, the advice I would personally give everyone is to stop getting in this weird mentality where you have to think about 10,000 like that must be fucking exhausting to get in there and be like, all right, this is it. I'm in a social situation and now I got to remember all the rules. Okay, I am high value. I'm more valuable than all these people. I'm of a better stock. Okay, I got to get out there and then okay, I got to approach them. This person is I consider them to be less attractive, so I'm going to talk to the less attractive one, and then I'm going to flirt with them. But then I'm going to have to nag the other one, because if I nag the other one, then she'll be interested in me, because people love being devalued and to be like, holy shit, be a nice fucking person and have a conversation. Like, don't make people feel awkward. There's a really good piece of advice when it comes to like either talking to other human beings or flirting with other people, is that if you are in a conversation with another person, do you know when it makes you feel like I don't want to be in this conversation anymore? Of course you do, because we've all been there. You've all been in a situation with another human being where you're having a talk and you're like, fuck, I can't wait for this to end. This person's absolutely atrocious. Don't be that person, okay? Don't be in a situation where you know that you're making people awkward, because you know what it is like to be and feel bad yourself. Don't go out there and make fun of people. Don't go out there and say, yeah, fucking you're ugly or something like that. Yes, that's gonna do miles of legwork for you in terms of like flirting with other people. Except that every single person that you may be attracted to may not be interested in you. That's just the reality of the situation. And once you realize that, you will be free from this idea that like I have a goal and I have to achieve my goal, and this will not be done until I have got the fembots. Every one of these fembots is my opponent. It is me versus the fembots right now, you know, and now I have to defeat them all by, you know, hitting on them and destroying them through my trained logical fallacies that I will throw upon them, and they'll feel ugly and devalued and all. No, absolute nonsense. Do not do that. Please, okay? Play your cards right. Get a threesome. True. That's the ultimate goal, right? I mean, this isn't really... the game is the game. Ultimately, by positioning yourself strategically, you'll be able to achieve as many threesomes as possible. And don't ever have a non-sexual relationship or a platonic relationship with a woman. Don't ever do that. Because if you do that, obviously, you're just wasting your time. Why would anyone do that? There's no interest you should have in another human being outside of them being your sex vessels. That's ultimately the only thing that's really important. So that's the way you should just view the world at all times. It's you versus them. This is what sets up these strange archetypes that, of course, there's going to be a huge swath of men who are upset by this, because it's like, well, I was taught by all the pickup artists that it's me versus the fembots, and that when I'm battling the fembots and that I don't achieve the thing which is sex, the only thing that any of us should be achieving, then I have failed at the game. And so maybe I'm just involuntarily being this way or something to that effect. Like, it's because you've got this weird warped view of the world, that these aren't actually human beings. These aren't people with like thoughts, desires, all this kind of shit. It's like, no, they are holding me back from what I am owed, which is sex. I am owed sex, and so that's basically the battle. We're trying to wear each other down until I can achieve my goal. Like, absolutely fucking horrendous way of viewing the world, you know? Like, you can have conversations with people that will have ultimately no end goal in there being a sexual relationship between two people. If you are interested in someone and that interest is not reciprocal, then please move on to someone else. That way it doesn't go into the verge of being creepy. Don't hurt yourself, fellas. Here's some advice from the other side. Don't get stuck in a situation where you're constantly and consistently doing everything you can to please another person who doesn't have a long-term interest in you, and that other person is either a aware of it or unaware of it, that you're trying to have a relationship with them, because that will hurt you. That will wear you down. There is going to be a situation where, like, yes, the friend zone or whatever you want to call it, all these kind of things, it's damaging for both parties. It's damaging for the person who feels like we just have a platonic relationship and we're just friends, and it's damaging for the person who's like, well, yes, but if I just keep at it and I keep wearing you down, maybe in 4 to 6 years, if I play the long game, we'll be in a committed marriage and have 2.5 kids. That's a bad scenario as well, right? So much of this is just positioning itself to be this game of numbers, this game of, like, you know, who can we get, all this kind of shit. Or 2.5 years. I mean, maybe the long game is less long, you know? The dating advice seems to be like a plague of intersexuality. Well, the problem is that so much of this scene, again, is dominated by the worst possible people. It's dominated by people who are interested in setting this whole thing up as an us versus them thing. As in, like, every single thing has to be an exchange. It commodifies the very act of a relationship itself. Like, you know, how many women have you slept with successfully through my techniques? If you use my techniques, I can guarantee male orgasm. 3 easy payments of $49.99. Please, like, sign up now. You know, all this other weird shit. Commodification of relationships. That's my small rant. But how do we get them to see this ain't no game? Also true. Hey, by the way, one piece of advice that I could give you is, if you do happen to have the wondrous, amazing thing that is a platonic friendship with a woman, so if you are a cis man and you have a relationship with a cis woman that is not sexual, that you are just friends, of which, yes, they exist, they're real, you can also ask them for advice in this, because guess what? Men aren't going to be the consistent best person to get advice with on what women want or are thinking of. You might want to talk to, I don't know, here's a random thought, another woman, right? You might want to ask another woman, hey, can I get your advice on this subject? I've got a person that I'm really interested in. You know, this has happened. Here's the story. What do you think about that? And they may give you some insight that, like, another man is just going to sit there and be like, oh, bro, what? You haven't smashed? No, you got to smash the puss. How long has it been? Fucking 4 DMs? No smash push? Fuck. Oh, all right. Well, you might as well call yourself an incel and throw yourself out of the dating pool. Fuck that, bro. No, you smash the push or I don't want to talk to you. Like, yeah, please have conversations and friendships with people that don't only end in sex. Like, do you have, if you are a cis man and a straight cis man, do you have relationships with other straight cis men? Yes, you do. Are those relationships only sexual? Of course they're not, because you're like, well, because I'm not attracted to my homies, all right? I'm not going to suck his dick. I mean, a couple fingers may slip every now and then, but that's not what this is about. Well, yeah, that same thing can happen with cis women as well. You can have a platonic relationship with a cis woman where the end result is not that, like, well, if my only reason for talking to you or having a conversation is ultimately that we're going to smash. And if we're not going to smash, why are we talking? Why are we even getting to know each other? I don't understand this. If there's no smash possibility, what is the point behind this? I was like, fucking, because it's a human being, and we form relationships, and we live for you know, the friends and families that we have. Like, I don't want to get existential on you, but, like, the greatest joys in life can be the relationships that we form, the bonds that we form with other people, you know? maybe speaks to something higher. And hell yeah, I smash, bro. Of course. Yeah. This is coming from someone who smashes, all right? You gotta trust those who smash. Don't listen to people who don't smash. They don't know. Unless you smash, you're not an authority on the subject. Only people can talk about this. Like, fucking, it's the worst part about all this culture. That's why I'm constantly pushing. You know, I haven't listened to it yet, so I don't know if I could give it a thrilling endorsement. But based on how based Shark Zero is in general, if he's got a leftist podcast for the fellas about how to deal with relationship issues from a leftist perspective, that is not about everything should be a game of numbers and everything should be about destroying the fembots, that is a fucking beautiful thing. I want to see more of those. I want to see more people talking about genuine relationship advice and knowing, like, there are pitfalls, there are things that are difficult. There are going to be those very awkward moments because you are putting yourself out there. You are being judged on the value of you as a person, and that can really fucking hurt. Trust me, as someone who's experienced a lot of rejection in his life, it can be devastating. And that's why the stakes are so high for some of these things. And that's why people can be so nervous and can take these things so seriously, because it feels bad to be rejected. But you have to get used to either the rejection and part of that nervousness and the dance of it, and understand that it's not a zero-sum game. It's that mentality that it is a zero-sum game that puts you into a very dangerous perspective in the first place. It's not a zero-sum game, and yes, you will get rejected because every human being does. That's a natural part of life. But part of that is you are going to grow as a person, you're going to learn, and also just having conversations with strangers can be a very beneficial thing. Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form, available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Just, we beseech thee to smite down our enemies. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your humble court jesters, here to amuse you. To our lords, Trevor R., we give thanks for this spit of land for us to eke out this meager existence. To our knights, Merid, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Ellie Leslie, Alex P., Brandon, Words Greenwood, Nate, that one guy, Hagbird Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Coulter Smith, Val 9000, Jenna Tall, Quiet 185, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, The Tim Caucus, Multimondi, Trevor Yanis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojak, Cern 42, Catherine, Radical Maniac, Ramon Acosta, Nkosin, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Political Puppy, Andreas Chiringuito, Zach Christensen, Josh Mickelson, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our flag in a veil, and we salute you, our friends.